Please say your name, your rank, and a little bit about your work in the military.
Okay, my name is Rita Miller, maiden name Brady. I ended up getting out as a Sergeant E5, United States Army. A little bit about my work: I was trained as a psychological operations specialist. Didn't do that a whole lot though. When you're in the military, you kind of go and do what's needed. For the most part, I processed security clearances.
So why did you join the service?
When I was in high school, I was in Navy ROTC for 4 years, and that gave me a little bit of respect for my country, patriotism. So that was part of, you learn about the wars and stuff like that, and just wanted to give something back and continue that. Plus my family has a history of my dad was in the Air Force, my brother went into the Marines, so there's a little bit of that in the family too.
What made you choose the Army over the other branches?
When I was in high school, my senior year, it was college or career day. It happened to be uniform day for the Navy ROTC program, so I was there with all my medals and my rank and everything like that. Went up to talk to the Navy recruiters because I wanted to go Navy, and a football player came up, and all the recruiters just talked to him and completely ignored me. So I went to talk to the Army recruiter, and the Army recruiter talked to me, so I ended up going Army.
What are some memorable stories from your time in the military?
There are some funny stories here and there, but nothing really stands out for me. It was mostly a job.
Yeah.
It was different hours and required PT, but it was basically a job.
Did you have to move around a lot? Because I know with my dad, he was stationed all over. We were always constantly moving.
Yeah, I was only supposed to be in for 3 years. I ended up being in for 3.5 years because I was stop loss. That's when they tag certain people with a certain job description or MOS, let them leave when they're supposed to. So I was in during Desert Storm, and people with my MOS, 96 Foxtrot, it was also later a 37 Foxtrot. I couldn't leave even though I wasn't doing anything, and I didn't do anything. I didn't go anywhere. I was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina my entire time except for basic training, which was at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Even my AIT was at Fort Bragg. That is the only place where they do training for the 37 Foxtrot MOS. So I did my AIT at Fort Bragg, and that's also the only place where they're stationed as a permanent basis. So they don't go anywhere else for a 37 Foxtrot except there, unless they're deployed for temporary duty.
Could you go into more detail about what the 37 Foxtrot, what you guys specifically did? Psychological operations is a kind of a deterrent to war in that one of the main objectives is to get the other side to surrender or not engage. So like leaflet drops, where they would have, like during Desert Storm, some of the things that were printed up were safe passage passes, where if you had one of those, you could turn yourself in, from the opponent's side, not from our side, so they could come over to us and surrender, and that they would be provided safe passage. So part of the PSYOP operation is to study individual areas, get background on the culture and history, and learn how to talk to people, civilian and military, and in some cases nowadays it's the same thing. So you learn how to not offend and encourage them to basically give up before any hostilities are engaged. What did you find the most difficult about doing that job?
For the most part, I didn't do that job because I was, when I got trained, I was sent to, it's called the S2 office. It's the security area. So I did document security. I ended up holding a top secret special background investigation clearance because I had to be able to be trained to handle
top secret and above material that maybe needed to be guarded. I may not have access to it, but I needed to have that clearance so I could guard it without it being a problem. And I also mostly process security clearances for other people, so it was basically a desk job.
Yeah.
But even there was separate areas within PsyOps where, because I did do for a little bit, I studied one of the countries that was in our area of operations, and I did reports so that the information could be available if we needed to develop anything for that particular country.
Now, you said you weren't married during the time you
No.
were. What was it like being away from your family then? Were your parents? How
It was
proud
kind of nice.
It was nice. Yeah.
I think of it a lot as my college years,
Yeah.
because basically 3.5 years,
Yeah.
the time that everybody's. So you're learning to become your own person. You're learning what you can and can't do mentally, physically. And do it without the security net of your parents being close by, and it was kind of nice. I didn't really appreciate my parents as much as I could have until after I got back home.
So you started when you were 18, and
Yeah.
you went to about 22.
Yeah, I was 21 because it was only 3.5 years. Yeah.
When you first decided to join, what would your dad say? Him being in the Air Force, was he proud?
I think he was proud. He didn't
Yeah.
say a whole lot. Still kind of the male mentality, the way he was taught to grow up, how they dealt with women. You know, I think he was proud, but he wasn't overly enthusiastic about
Yeah.
it, but that's okay.
Yeah. Now, do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have 3 brothers.
Did any of them go into the military?
My oldest brother was a Marine.
So was he in the Marines before you went in?
Yes, and he was in and almost out before because he's 5 years older than me, so.
Was he a part of one of the factors that caused you to join? Did he encourage you to join?
No, he didn't encourage but he didn't discourage me either.
You made your own decision.
Yeah.
Were there any specific times or days that stood out in your mind when you did serve? Like anything you had to do that you did enjoy, or anything you did that you did enjoy?
Yeah, one of my favorite things was when I was in basic training, I got to shoot a LAW. It's a light anti-tank weapon. I got to shoot, it was a dummy round, but it was a shoulder fired. And I was one of the ones, because everybody got to try something different, and the LAW was the one I got to try. Dummy round, hit the tank with blue powder.
Were there any other cool things that you... Okay, so what were we talking? We were talking about all the cool things you
Oh,
did
the
in
cool
basic
things.
training,
Yeah, one of the things I could have done, but I chose not to, was go to airborne school. So I was in an airborne unit, and actually we got to wear the red berets, and it really irritated people when people who weren't airborne qualified got to wear the red berets, maroon berets. So yeah.
Now, was there anything that stood out in your training that was really hard? Because my dad, he always talks about, like, when he was stationed in San Diego, they had some of the SEALs there, and they had to do a couple of the things that SEALs had to do for his training. And he just talks, he still to this day talks about how tough those activities were.
Yeah, nothing, and just basic was a little tough, just because you're not used to it. Holding rifles out like this, really,
Yeah.
it's kind of a punishment that wasn't a punishment, but because it did help build strength. But boy, those things.
Yeah.
I remember carrying in AIT. I carried an 80-pound pack for several miles.
Yeah.
Because that's what we all had to be able to do. I wish I could have done a little bit more, because there was, the loudspeaker units were really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody has ever talked about Panama and Noriega, and the loudspeaker teams that played the rock music, because he was big into opera, and rock music irritated him. And supposedly, I don't think it was ever, confirmed, but people I knew had talked about, blasting the loudspeakers down there with the rock music. And I got an article. I don't know if anything like that, if you guys would be interested in anything like that to read, to have.
I'm sure we could even probably scan it up on the website.
Well, I have one that you can have.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there's others that you can scan if you like.
Do you think the military changed you in any way?
I don't think it necessarily changed me. I think it helped me determine who I was. But actually, I think that developed even more after I got out, because you're still a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, you think you're an adult,
But
you're still. I mean, a lot of your thinking is very self-centered, and I think that's just a process you have to go through.
Yeah.
Just decide who you are.
thank you for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you.